Now I would like to introduce you our second keynote speaker to open this event, Professor Robin Harris. Robin Harris is a historian, also a journalist, and he used to be an advisor to Margaret Thatcher. For me, it's very important to underline that because you might know that New Direction was funded under the patronage of Margaret Thatcher. Dear Robin, thank you very much for your help once again, and also congratulations for your last book that was published, I think, end of last year on the history of Croatia. The floor is yours.
Dobrodošli svima. Ovo će biti na engleskom. Lakše za mene, ali to je lako za vas kad imate kako se zove, simultaneous translation. Dobro. Well, this is the third international conference which our Center for the Renewal of Culture has organized with New Direction. And I want to reciprocate the kind remarks that have been made because it's not often that one can find an organization which is so professional and with whose overall aims one can find such sympathy as we do with New Direction. So thank you, all of you from New Direction who have been involved in this, not least Mrs. Lozo. Well, what you do is to make work possible. Let's be realistic about it. Work in the sense that all involved have worked to bring it about. And I want to mention Mate Ćurić, who is now acting as a chief photographer as well as everything else, because I have good ideas, but lots of people have good ideas. Other people actually have to carry them out. And he has a few good ideas too. But anyway, he did most of the work, not me. But work as well, in the sense that we're working to change perceptions, and thus to change society, to renew the culture in Croatia, and if we can, more widely still. And I shall go into a lot of this in what will actually be my first presentation, because this is just the first bit you hear of me. So, conservatives do not falsify or manipulate history. We leave that to the left, who have long experience of it. But without hesitation, we draw on it to support our arguments. Now, why do we need to do so? Well, because a false version of history, particularly when taught to a generation that has no personal lived experience of it, can have harmful consequences. If the national heroes, and how many national heroes there were in Yugoslavia, if the national heroes were not, in fact, heroes at all, but murderers, if the celebrated triumphs, the victories, were in truth occasions for inflicting massive suffering, if the slogans about brotherhood and unity, equality, and the people's justice were just devices to impose a one-party state, then none of that legacy should be incorporated in a liberal democratic order. On Tuesday, the 8th of May, as we've heard, and we will hear again, there was wild rejoicing in Britain and elsewhere in the West. The unconditional surrender of Germany marked the end of the war in Europe and has ever since been celebrated there as Victory in Europe VE Day. Now, the war in the Pacific had not yet been concluded, but there was another reason for concern, at least in Winston Churchill's mind, who had a shrewder understanding of Stalin's intentions than had Roosevelt and the Americans. This was that a large swathe of Europe had effectively passed under the control of the Soviet Union. As early as 1946, Churchill delivered that famous Iron Curtain speech, for which we should remember he was heavily criticized at the time. The guarantee of Polish independence, which was the casus belli for Britain in 1939, was not honored. Communist regimes, by different processes and at different speeds, would take over in Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. Now, what was happening in Zagreb on VE Day must be seen in that broader context. Characteristically, the report in the party newspaper Vjesnik of the reception given to the partisans on the 8th of May significantly distorts the truth. It reads, "Units of the glorious, victorious Yugoslav army entered liberated Zagreb." The more than 100,000 citizens of Zagreb, men, women, the young people, gathered at that mass meeting, it said, they are yet another proof that Zagreb belongs to Tito. In fact, as this well-known photograph of partisan units marching in single file across an otherwise empty Banja Lucic square proves, there was no spontaneous public enthusiasm. A concentrated effort by the party leadership was required to mobilize the population for the first demonstrations, culminating with that mass meeting in Jelačić Square on the 13th of May. And I'll return to that in my formal presentation. So, did the arrival of the Yugoslav partisans bring about what is still widely and without qualification, please note, without qualification described as liberation or slobođenje in Croatia, or did it in fact initiate a new totalitarian dictatorship? Now, the answer to that will be provided over these 2 days by specialists in the field, by historians. And we have here some of the best of our very good Croatian historians to tell us about that. But we also have other experts who will speak about the experience of their countries under communism. And I want to welcome our good friends, I don't know whether he's here, Igor Omerza, is he here? And Mitja Ferenc from over the border in Slovenia. And I want to extend a particularly warm greeting to our visiting scholars from Lithuania and Poland, Arunas Bubnis, Rasa Čajpatiene, and Grzegor Volk. Now, communism is, in the fullest sense, totalitarian. It's based on a revolutionary ideology, on propaganda, on personality cults, on terror, on repression, and more generally, on the pursuit of unlimited control. A system, therefore, which does not willingly leave any aspect of life untouched. This was Tito's Yugoslavia, Gottwald's Czechoslovakia, Gomulka's Poland, Ceausescu's Romania, as well, of course, as Stalin's Soviet Union. Now, the motivation cannot be fully grasped without also grasping its, what I would call, insane utopianism. As Milovan Djilas explained to his audience here on 1st of September 1948, so please note, after that famous break with Stalin, he said, the struggle to create socialism in our country is at the same time a struggle to create a new man, to create a new man. Now that is the language of religion without God. It's also the deadliest secular religion that the world has seen. The figures for deaths inflicted by communism are staggering. More than 90 million worldwide, about 1 million of these in Eastern Europe, and that figure excludes the 20 million or so in the Soviet Union. The manifestations and developments of communism naturally in some degree differ. Among the factors affecting that are proximity to the Soviet Union, as with Lithuania and the Baltic states, the strength of the Catholic Church, which proved the main obstacle to the party's ambitions in Poland and Croatia, and the national question, which was crucial, of course, in Yugoslavia. Now, in Yugoslavia, the party claimed to have settled the national question. But it only repressed it. In the end, along with economic failure, that destroyed communist Yugoslavia. But in the meantime, national rivalries and hatreds were carefully used and exploited to maintain Tito and his comrades in power. Communism lasted in Yugoslavia more than 40 years, and its traces have not been expunged. To the contrary, Zagreb's second most important square, now Republic of Croatia Square, Trg Republika Hrvatske, has lost its previous title, thanks to Zlatko Hasanbegovic. It has lost its previous title, Marshal Tito Square, Trg Marshala Tita, but there's a strong movement to reinstate it. Doing so is even considered by some a litmus test of success in the fight against that much discussed right-wing revisionism. There is a road in Zagreb bearing the name of Vlado Ranogajec, the most active judge of the military court of Zagreb, who sentenced large numbers to death, men, women, and in one case a child, a 16-year-old girl. There is no road, square, or park dedicated to Zagreb's beatified wartime Archbishop Aloysius Stepinac. There is a Zagreb square dedicated to the victims of fascism. No one even suggests that there should be a square dedicated to the victims of communism. That word communism isn't much used, in fact, and almost never, you should note, in the Croatian media. Instead, we are occasionally, though rarely, allowed to hear the word socialism. More frequently, we're encouraged to wallow in some manufactured nostalgia about Tito. But most often, as Branko Loza has said, we are confronted by a series of aggressive communist assertions masked as anti-fascism. And let me elaborate on that. The term anti-fascist in Italian-occupied Istria from the 1920s and later in Italian-occupied Dalmatia meant essentially anti-Italian, Italy having been ruled by fascists since 1922. The use of the term anti-fascist more generally was a communist device. It reflects the party's decision in 1936 to move to a popular front strategy to resist Hitler. This involved uniting all centrist and leftist forces under a moderate banner till times changed, as they soon did. Because in 1939, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact ended Popular Front for anti-fascism overnight. Far from supporting resistance to fascism, or in practice Nazism, Tito in 1940 praised the party's, that is Stalin's, decision to stay out of what Tito called, and I quote, the Second Imperialistic War. Then, on the 22nd of June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union. Now Tito and the Yugoslav party transformed themselves into resistance heroes, an event which is ridiculously observed on that day as a national holiday here in Croatia, where almost everybody knows we are celebrating a largely fictitious event. During and after the war, Stalin insisted on the communist parties, under the authority of the Comintern and then the Cominform, pursuing a popular or national front strategy. That is, a broad alliance in which the party was in control but concealed its revolutionary intentions. As Stalin instructed the communists of East Germany in 1948, I quote, "You should advance towards socialism not by taking a straight road, but by moving in zigzags." The former Yugoslav countries have generally sought to conceal the working of the previous Communist Party state, the decisions of its leaders and the operations of its secret police. Slovenia is the most open, Serbia the most firmly closed, with Croatia somewhere in between. In the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, by contrast, the evidence was taken out of the hands of the police authorities and can freely be used by researchers. In a scholarly manner, the story of repression is thus being told, and undoubtedly society in, for example, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Germany is the better for it. In Croatia, as Branko said, there was no lustration and not a single successful trial for the many terrible crimes that the communists committed. The mass graves have not been systematically investigated and exhumed, though some progress is being made. And we, people who want to know about these things, are generally regarded as troublemakers, stuck in the past, and so on. But I am afraid the anti-fascists must accept the truth will be told. What happens now?